Welcome, everyone. This is WSA TV, a special episode with Melanie Benson now. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
I'm very excited because today we're going to be talking about leveraging the power of podcasting, but not doing a podcast, being a guest on a podcast for women speakers in particular. And I'm very excited because you're actually doing the speaker success training next week for our members and non-members who want to pay individually for your training. And we do these speaker success trainings every month at Women Speakers Association. They're high content. They're geared to guide women to expand their message, build their speaking business, and have greater impact. Our experts join us here on the first Thursday, like Melanie, you're doing today, to share a preview as well as an opportunity for you guys to ask questions so she can actually customize that presentation for us. But today's topic, as I mentioned, is being a podcast guest and leveraging that to attract clients and attract ideal leads and enroll them as clients. So I wanted to tell everyone a little bit about you, Melanie, before you get started. And I kind of get into the meat of what is this whole thing about podcast guesting. So, and just to remind everyone, April 9th is the day when this is going to happen and where Melanie's going to teach at speakersuccesstraining.com. If you are a premier member, it is included in your membership. If you're not, go to speakersuccesstraining.com and you'll learn how to attract clients on using being a guest on podcasts. Now, Melanie, you have been on like 450 podcasts and you have your own podcast. And just so everyone knows, Melanie is known as the profit amplifier. She guides expertpreneurs on how to stand out in a crowd and exponentially increase revenues by leveraging their unique profit amplifier. And if you weren't here in January, she did an amazing training on that. And if you're a member, by the way, you get that training. So, Melanie's also the host of the Amplify Your Success podcast, the author of Rewired for Wealth. She's the co-author of Entrepreneurs.com's Startup Guide to Starting an Information Marketing Business. And she's been featured in Bloomberg, Business Week, Women's Day, and Parenting Magazine. So, Melanie, one of the greatest things how I know you is through your executive team member role at Women Speakers Association. So welcome. Thank you so much for giving us your wisdom today and always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. You do such a great job hosting our WSA TV. It's always fun to come and chat with you because we end up like having such an extraordinary conversation, and there's a lot of value in what we're going to cover today with podcast guesting.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So tell us a little bit about your background with regard to podcasting and how you got into it.
Yeah, so way back in the beginning of my career, before podcasts were a thing, I hosted what you might call like a CD club. So there was people paid me to interview people every month. And I did this for probably close to 8 or 10 years. And when podcasting came out, I thought, wow, okay, here's a way to do that in a whole new level where we can host a podcast, we can have a conversation with people. I don't have to put anything in the mail. It's going to reduce my costs, massively. But also, it's going to really open up how many people can learn extraordinary wisdom from experts and business owners. And I mean, there's a podcast on everything from true crime to parenting to, like behind the scenes with celebrities. My Amplify Your Success podcast happens to be about how to, really take small steps that have massive impact on your clients and your bottom line in your business. So I started a video podcast before we even had Facebook Lives and all of that. And it was really hard to do. And so what I discovered very quickly is people were hungry for online content. And there was no shortage of people who wanted to be featured, but I wasn't going to do it with video because that was a lot of extra work at the time before we had this great technology we're using right now. So I transitioned to audio. And what I realized, and this has been mind-blowing, is podcasting is one of the fastest growing industries on the planet. There's some statistics that between the end of 2018 and the end of 2019, at the end of 2018, there were 550,000 podcasts. At the end of 2019, there were 950,000 podcasts.
Wow, that's like double.
Yes, and so it's almost double. And what that tells me, and in my own experience, what I found is podcasting does three things. One, if you're hosting a podcast, you're positioning your authority. But if you are guesting on a podcast, you are immediately borrowing and leveraging the influence of that podcaster because you're being featured by them. So it's a fabulous way to instantly start building credibility in the eyes of that audience. And then the second thing is there is basically between video and podcasting, those are the two top ways to use the virtual world to get a captive audience for your most perfect clients who are eagerly searching for wisdom, for training, for knowledge from people just like you. And then the third thing about podcasting is it's there for life. So,
Hmm.
quick story, way back in the beginning of podcasting, getting started for John Lee Dumas, who's a very famous podcaster, Entrepreneur on Fire. He invited me into his podcast, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know this guy, but sure, why not? And so I got on his podcast. It's probably been 6 years, 7 years since I was on his podcast. To this day, it still drives leads for me, and I still get clients from that podcast. That was literally in the first 16 months of him airing his podcast. So it is evergreen, which means it's constantly going to be generating leads and clients for you if you do a good job of really nailing that interview.
I really love that, doing the work once, getting your name out there, starting a brand, as long as you know what your brand is and your profit amplifier, like you talked about in January, then it's now time you want to be leveraging this podcast guesting. So what are you seeing happening with guesting as a strategy?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I think are happening right now. One, it's not new information to get out there to guest on people's podcasts. A lot of marketers are teaching this. A lot of people are now going out and actively offering to book you on podcasts, which is great if you want to save the time and energy. And what I see happening is there's a lot of people who want to get on podcasts, and there's very little understanding of how to pitch, how to get booked, and how to actually deliver something that does become your best client magnet. And I have seen so many experts and really high profile, very visible, very accomplished speakers come on interviews and make what I actually created this little list because there's 17 mistakes I see people making over and over and over again. And what happens, yes, most people don't charge you to get on their podcast, but there's still effort. There's still, time and energy on both sides. And if you're making these mistakes, then what's happening is you're killing the energy of someone who might actually want more from you. And you're not setting up this, what I call this magnetic pull, to lean in and say, how do I work with that person? How do I get that thing they're offering? It just kind of it's too easy to click away.
Mm, oh goodness, I can't wait to learn from you about the right ways to do podcast guesting. So there's one thing to say, yes, I'm going to go be on a podcast, but it's another thing to say, I'm going to do it and leverage it. And so you see a lot of mistakes out there, I hear you saying. And is there if a woman speaker wants to start doing this and leveraging this, what advice do you have?
Well, I think the very first thing I want you to do is get that when you, as an accomplished speaker or is a new speaker, like if you're just foraying into, I've got this message in my heart and my soul, and I'm hearing about podcasts. And so, yeah, can't even get into a live event right now with what's happening in our world as we're going live with this. But you want to get into those virtual platforms. What you have to remember is this. You can be the best speaker on the planet, but if you show up and you wing that interview, I guarantee you are not doing what you need to do to get that magnetic connection going. I like to think of it like this, Laura. If we were going to be spotlighted on a TV news segment, you would have a game plan. But people forget that podcasting and video like this is still media. It's just another form. And so you still have to come in with a game plan. I call it creating a golden thread between what it is you want somebody to do and how you design the flow of the conversation and what you're pitching the host or the show in the first place. And I think that's one of the things that happens. It falls apart. I'll give you a little sneak preview. This is one of the big mistakes that experts make. They're winging it. They're like, I know my stuff. I can talk about it in my sleep, but they don't have that golden thread designed between the two ends of what they want and what they're asking people to do. And so there's nothing compelling that pulls a person who's listening in to act. So as a woman speaker, I want you to think about, are you willing to put a little bit of energy into designing a golden thread, the steps between what you want them to do and where you start, so that you're magnetizing people in? Like, imagine investing an hour, even if you just did one interview a week, and so you have something out there that's producing over and over and over again great leads for you. Imagine all you have to do is invest a few hours to get all those pieces together, and it pays off over and over and over again. That is the absolute best return on investment you can ask for. So we'll cover some more of those tips in the speaker success training, but this is something that I think, whether you are wanting to get out there speaking or you want to complement the speaking you're doing and really build up your authority, and kind of like, you can speak a lot out there in person, and then you can add the podcast guesting to actually complement and build more buzz around your message. And those partnerships are perfect to help you continue to be front of mind to the people booking speakers and looking for you.
Mm. Three things come to mind. First is plan your pitch, then plan your interview.
Yeah.
These are kind of the takeaways I'm getting from what you're saying. And then it's also about what is the message? How does this amplify who you already are, to create what some like PR people say, that I've heard of you effect. And then, because in marketing, what I know is that the more you're in front of people, then they're like, oh, I've seen that person. And then like, oh, I've seen that person again. And then maybe there's something they want to take action on, maybe the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time. They either saw that you're on a podcast, listened to you on a podcast, saw you speak, saw you talking about speaking, got your download, whatever it is. But it's another way to be consistently building your brand awareness.
Yeah. And I love that you said there's that I've heard of you effect. And that's how you go from chasing opportunities to opportunities chasing you. And that's what things really kind of get lit up, and you're on fire in your work. And it's a lot less work to kind of get the machine going. But if you do the buzz factor properly, that means you understand there are what I call the rocks method. You're using the rocks method to actually integrate showstoppers and really catchy phrases that are not just sounding like everything else out there, but they're unique to you, and they're amplifying your message in a way that people lean in and go, how do I get more of that?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's different than speaking on stage, because you typically have a little more time than an interview, which is oftentimes 20 to 25 minutes. You've got to know how to really hone in snappy messaging, key points, and establish your credibility with very specific messaging strategies. I call them magnetic messaging strategies.
And I know you're amazing at that, by the way.
Oh,
Every time I listen to a webinar or an interview of you, it's like, wow, that's it. That's the key nugget. Like, I have these key nuggets I want to take away. So those sound bites, if we can learn how to do that when we're podcast guesting, then you're memorable. You're creating that memorability, and people wanted to follow up with you and follow you around the web. Right?
Yeah. And that's what happens. They start following you around. They share your stuff more. I call it creating like this buzzworthy content.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's the tipping point. When your stuff is creating that kind of buzz and momentum, you're going to have a line of people inviting you onto their stages. You're going to get bigger and more popular podcast hosts coming to you. And it really changes the dynamics of the whole marketing process.
Right. Right. Oh, so good. So tell us about what you're training about next week. That's Wednesday the 9th, right? Are we
Mhm.
talking? No, it's the
Yep,
Wednesday the
speaker
10th.
success training, yep.
The
And by the way, if you are a Premier
8th.
member,
The 8th.
oh, the 8th. Sorry, the 8th. We're on Wednesday, the 8th. So if you are a Premier member, it does come with your membership, and you do still have to register. And I'm actually going to give something live on the session that's going to help you take immediate action on all this. So you're going to want to make sure that you do join us live. So here's what I want to do for our community, because I did get in on this really early. So I had the distinct advantage of building a lot of momentum before everybody and their brother was trying to stand out on this medium. And so I know there's a little bit of what I call priming the pump. And so the first thing I want to make sure everybody leaves with from that training is how to prime the podcast host pump, so that when you want to pitch somebody, they're already looking at you instead of you coming at them blind. We call them blind pitches, where people just go, hey, can I get on your show? I have this topic. And you're like, this is the 30th person that's pitched me this topic this week. And it just goes in the delete file. But there's some really unique things you can do to get in front of those hosts and really start creating some synergy with them, so that when you do pitch them, they're paying attention rather than just hitting the delete. So we'll talk about priming the pump. The second thing I want to make sure everybody who attends walks away with is a really clear understanding of the podcasts that could be a gold mine of opportunity for you. Because not all podcasts are the same. And depending on where you're at in your trajectory of your business or your career, there might be different podcasts that are a better fit for you to really ramp up that visibility quickly and make sure you're getting in the right audiences that will respond to you. So we're going to talk about how to really identify the best podcast for you to get on. And then third, I'm going to cover the 3 most common mistake that experts and experienced speakers are making when they get on a podcast interview, because they think it's almost like just being on a stage. So I'll show you how to flip that and use my rocks method to not just stand out, but create that buzz energy that gets more opportunity and clients coming your way. So that's really 3 of the big takeaways that we'll cover. And ultimately, like, I want to answer the big questions you have about it. So that's one of the nice things about coming live is, throw me your big questions. Tell me what's on your mind. Let's make sure that you know how to get into action around it. Oh, Laura, we can't hear you.
And feel free to, throw them here,
Yeah, totally.
so that you know them ahead of time. So if there are questions coming up, we want to know. And so if you are a member, you'll want to look for the email that allows you to register. If you're not a member, go to speakersuccesstraining.com and go ahead and pay for and sign up for it. If you want to become a member, simply go to joinwsa.com and join us that way, and you get to leverage a whole lot more visibility strategies and a whole sisterhood community and the speaker success training and your past speaker success training, which I think helps you make that magnetic message. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're not
Yes.
going to work on the messaging. We're going to work on the format of the messaging
Yes. We're
on
going to
this.
tackle like how to take the core messaging and verb it up, really like magnetize it so it is pulling people in. But yes, as a member, you get access to my Create Your Signature Speech training that really helps you get that core message out. And, Laura, I had this really beautiful conversation with a fellow sister member the other day, because she was approaching me about because I have a program called Get Magnetic Messaging, and we're seeing if it was right for her. And what she was saying is what she was really looking forward to, and what we're going to bring to you in speaker success training, is clarity. She's like, when I feel clear about what to do and how to message things, I'm more confident to go out and pitch myself and get booked. And if I'm not clear and I don't have that confidence, like, I catch myself holding myself back. And I think that's what we really want for this speaker success training, actually for all of them. So we want you to have that clarity of how to do the things that get you booked, get you paid, and get you more clients. That's really what we hope for all of our speaker success trainings. And that's what we will create for you next week on the April one.
Yeah. And Roberta's saying here, plan how you'll optimize your reach for both yourself and the podcast. That's a great tip for the pitching part. And Tracy can't wait for this, and so can't Roberta. And Tracy had a question about having two podcasts, but I think
Mhm.
we're talking about something different, podcast guesting versus having your own podcast. Do you want to talk through
Yeah, but you
this?
know what? That's a great tie-in. So Tracy, yeah, please ask is it possible to have two completely different podcasts? So there are a lot of people. So we're just going to flip the conversation to hosting a podcast, which is a great complement to being a guest on other people's podcasts. I do think you can have more than one podcast. What I will tell you is every new podcast you start is literally like you have a different business to run. And when people are overwhelmed in general, like trying to keep up with one podcast, I don't advise creating multiple podcasts because having your own podcast is a lot of work. And to do it justice, you have to do things to not just create the episodes and distribute them. You need to market those episodes. You need to create visibility for your guests. That's how you get high profile guests. So, Tracy, what I would say is really check yourself and say, why would I create a different podcast? And is there a way I can somehow incorporate the two different things I want to do in one? That may not be possible, but could you wait and make sure you get one fully functioning and really productive and making money for you and getting the traction before you start the second one?
Yeah, great wisdom and advice to do. I can't wait for this. And Donna's saying she loves to hear that I see you everywhere, we talked about earlier. And
Yeah.
so, just as a reminder for those of you who are members, check your email. You'll have a link for registering. For those of you who are just hearing us for the first time or you're not yet members, go to speakersuccesstraining.com. We'd love to invite you in. And, Melanie, you're a master trainer. So, anybody who joins us is going to get beyond the benefit of what you'll even pay for this 10 times more or more. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
I really appreciate that. And Laura, you are just exquisite at interviewing people through WSA TV. If you guys are not yet subscribed, so you can keep up with the latest episodes, I highly recommend you do, because doing things like this are also a great complement to podcasts. So think of podcasts like any kind of virtual platform. We've got podcasts, but we've got WSA TV and other live shows like this. You've got virtual summits. They're all an extension of this concept we're talking about. And if you're like, well, I don't get podcasts, or I don't think my people listen to podcasts, I guarantee you getting on videos like this that get distributed through YouTube and other platforms, this is also an equally important platform to get your message shared on.
Yeah, and it gives you great practice, and it starts that visibility, and it does what Donna was emphasizing, that I've seen you everywhere. I just see you everywhere. People tell me
Yeah.
that all the time, and I'm like, I can't tell if they're annoyed or that's a good thing, but I'm tending towards it's a good thing.
Good. It's the buzz factor, and that's what we want. That's what gets people going, wait, who is this person? And maybe I should have them on my event stage, right? That's what tips that scale for you.
So if you do have questions you want Melanie to answer on the training next week, in-depth questions, feel free to add them here. Or if you are a member of our Premier members group, then definitely there's a post in there you can add, and we'll be checking that. And I can't wait for your training next week. So thank you again. Is there any last piece of wisdom, advice, or inspiration you want to leave with us?
I would just say that no matter where you're at in your journey, and this is actually a common question that comes up, if you're newer and you're thinking like, I don't know, is it too early for me to do this? Like, do I have my message? And I don't know, what would I ask them to do? I want to encourage you to be there anyway, because if you could start somewhere, it would be starting on podcasts and other types of virtual platforms that we were mentioning. And I can show you how to craft credibility that gets you ahead of the game. And you don't have to wait till you have 10 years of experience. You don't have to wait until you feel like everything's perfect. A little known secret, a lot of times when you pitch yourself to a podcast, it'll be months before it gets aired.
That's
So start
interesting.
now.
Start now. And, what's really great about podcast guesting is it's a lot less work than having your own podcast.
Yes.
You
Thank you
do
for
the work
saying that.
once, and you've got a template you can take out to pitch to others.
Yeah.
And like, there was another comment that Roberta made, which was, don't stretch your message. Just don't try to be a fit for every podcast
Yeah,
out there. Find the best fits that fit your main message. So
that's true.
total wisdom from two amazing podcasters, you and Roberta. And thank you for all the inspiring and encouragement to get out there and to do this. And I know you're going to make it easy. Like, you are so organized. You have the step-by-step plan on our speaker success training. I know people are going to walk away with action
Yeah.
items to
Yeah.
do that will help them leverage the power of podcast guesting. So if this is of interest, you want to attract and enroll more clients, this is a really good strategy. She's
So true.
really
So
good
true.
at it.
We'll do it. We'll do it. All right. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to connect with you all and hear what your questions are and share what your intention is. What would you like to get out of being on podcasts so I can help you connect those dots and build your golden thread?
Awesome. We'll see you then. Bye for
Bye.
now.